Jan Vorst, your spokesperson for the United Nations Secretariat. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking you, what does the UN do?
Well, with 192 member states, I'm sure you'll appreciate that it's very difficult to agree on doing anything. But the main thing that we do is we host cocktail parties, often with little chamber orchestras. And through these soirees, we aim to keep the world at peace.
How does that work?
Well, let's say two countries are in dispute. Their diplomats can come together informally, and with the right canapé, they can reach a compromise. So, I mean, for example, it's well known that the Strategic Arms Limitation Treaty was saved by the deployment of mushroom vol au vent.
Leaving aside the informal channels, do you find that the bureaucracy at the UN just prevents you from getting things done?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, and that, of course, is the masterstroke of the UN. You see, we're not supposed to do anything. Our role is to allow countries to let off steam. I mean, if the United Nations was to do anything, it could be very, very dangerous.
Surely the UN is at least the arbiter of legality.
Well, yes, I mean, in the same way as the X Factor is the arbiter of musical talent. You see, it comes down to a vote, really. You know, resolutions are passed by a simple majority. So if you have enough countries, you can pass a resolution.
So in theory, a majority could pass any resolution.
Oh, happens all the time. Absolutely. I mean, if you get enough countries who hate semolina pudding, you can have it classified as a crime against humanity. Although, of course, having said that, it is very difficult to get our member states to agree on anything, any issue, except one, of course.
What's that?
Oh, Israel.
Israel.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't matter how bad things are at the UN. A motion to censor Israel will bring everyone together. I mean, it's really uplifting. Yeah, I mean, look, take the Human Rights Council. Now, since 2006, it's passed 25 motions. 20 of those are against Israel. Nothing against Syria, Libya, Sudan, Zimbabwe. And yet 80% of its motions are against Israel. It's quite extraordinary. Take that away, and it would look like the Council hadn't done anything.
Why do you think Israel gets singled out for criticism?
Oh, well, that's a case of simple mathematics. You see, there are over 50 Muslim countries in the United Nations and only one Jewish country. To survive at the UN, you need friends. It's sort of like a giant prison for serious offenders. Israel is on its own, so it gets picked on. That's why, for example, it's not even a member of its own geographic region. The other countries won't have it.
That doesn't sound very United Nations.
Oh, it's very United Nations. But of course, I mean, Israel is a partial member of the Western European and Others group, or WEOG, as we call it. And of course, that comes with some valuable benefits for Israel.
Such as?
Such as it can compete in the Eurovision Song Contest, which, I should add, it has won 3 times.
You mentioned earlier the UN Council on Human Rights, which replaced the UN Human Rights Commission. Why was that change necessary?
Well, this goes back to 2003, when Libya was being investigated for human rights violations. And at the same time, it was elected chair of the Human Rights Commission. And at that point, even Secretary-General Kofi Annan had to admit it looked a little like the lunatics had taken over the asylum.
So he renamed the asylum?
Quite.
And how is the council doing? Is it doing better?
Oh, much, much better. It launched investigations into Belarus, the Congo, Cuba, Sudan. Yes.
And how are those investigations going?
Oh, they've all been cancelled. Yes, in fact, the Sudanese ambassador sent me a lovely note the other day saying how delighted he was that his country had been exonerated.
Let me ask you finally, are you still optimistic that the UN can resolve conflict?
Oh, yes. I mean, as a diplomat, I believe that all differences can be bridged with the right canapé.
Jan Wurst, thank you.
My pleasure.